Wait, I'll just check if we are live yet.
I
Yeah.
don't see you. Are we live?
So yeah, we are live. So I hope you will get some messages telling that we are live. Anyway, so I have seen that we are live.
Yeah.
So welcome, Vogel sir.
Yes,
A
I'm
very
just
warm
checking.
welcome from India.
Okay, thank you. Everything's prepared now.
Yeah.
Hello, JJ. Nice to meet you.
And what about the condition in Germany regarding coronavirus and all?
I think it's getting a little bit better now with Corona.
Okay.
Oh, there's some
So
delay. I see you talking, but I don't hear you.
don't see that. Don't see your desktop.
Okay.
Don't see your
That,
desktop. That will always be lagging. So
yeah,
you see
okay,
the
okay,
mobile. So,
okay.
there are many people that they are going to live from yesterday. They are writing me like when you are going to be live and what are the discussion we are going to talk about. And many of them, it is the first time experience to see the great Gernot Vogel. So it is an honor for us to talk to you. So, sir, at the very beginning, I just want to know that we had a lots of discussion when we are in the field. So you told that you are a chemist, basically,
Yeah, yeah.
and can you tell me like what is the thing that you like? What was the point that you started doing herpetology, and what was the year? Maybe a little bit about that.
Um, I started herpetology, in fact, as a reptile keeper, like many people doing in Germany. So I was keeping geckos when I started, by the way.
Hmm.
So for Varadiri, maybe more interesting.
Hmm.
And I was breeding them, and so I started my career. And after some time, it got too much work for me to feed all these small geckos with babies, with very small crickets, which are very expensive, and so on. So I switched to snakes. Snakes are
Hmm.
much more easy to keep,
Okay.
and so I started keeping snakes, and I wanted to make a publication about the snakes that I keep, and I
Okay.
wanted to give the correct name to the snakes. And then I saw that one of my snakes had a wrong name, and this was the start of my career.
What was the snake? Do you remember?
The first paper I was writing was keeping Dendrelaphis species, in fact,
Okay.
for the
So,
snake.
tell me, I think now also, as we speak, you have few species of snake in your home.
Uh, mm, more or less, I stopped with reptile keeping. I still have three snakes, but I had much more before.
Okay. So, you started off with geckos, but what was the group like? You work mainly on Asian reptiles, like Asian
Yeah,
snakes, Asian
yeah.
snakes. So, like there, you because in Germany you told me once that there are not many species of snake. Like there was a six species, and somebody wrote a book of 1,000 page. You told me sometime
Ah,
back.
yes, you remember that?
Uh,
Yeah.
that was there. So now, why like Asia?
Yeah, it was more or less by incident because I started working herpetologically in Turkey, to say the truth. I
Hmm.
was making my trips to Turkey, and
Hmm.
after some time, I said, "Oh, maybe Asia is also interesting." I was making holiday in Thailand and was reading Taylor Snakes of Thailand, and together with my girlfriend, by the way. And
I know.
and
That was very good.
so I started to come into the snakes of Thailand, which was very interesting for me.
Okay.
And this was my start of the career for Asia. In the beginning, I was making a research in Thailand and Malaysia,
Hmm.
and later I switched to other countries.
So, if you remember, what was the year that you made your first publication, serious publication?
I think the first species description was 1996,
19. And do you remember what species is that?
Trimeresurus venustus. Of
So,
course, I remember.
I read lots about your previously that Gernot Vogel website. We could download lots of paper. Nowadays, you just give the abstract there, not much paper to download. Maybe something to do with copyright.
Yeah, yeah, of course. The problem is I had really problems with my homepage for because I gave papers of Sauria, for example, free for download, and the
Okay,
journal was writing to me that this is forbidden and that I should take them down. I'm
okay,
allowed to make one page available, but not the whole paper.
okay.
And for some journals, it's for free. For some
Okay,
journals, as Pro Taxa, it's not for free. You cannot give the papers free for download. But if somebody asks you with
you can
email,
name. You
yeah,
can.
you can send.
Okay.
You can send it around. This is no problem, but you cannot make it public for download.
So, so you are at present or in the past, you are I as if I know you are interested in Trimerosaurus, Oligodon, Lycodon, lots of that. But what are the groups that you are looking right now?
At the very moment, what I'm working with, or generally, my main interests are large groups because I'm interested in making a collection work also, and I'm interested in mainly large genera like Opistotropis, Oligodon, Lycodon, Trimerosaurus, all these genera that have a lot of species and that cannot be solved inside the countries. I want to cooperate inside the countries, but my aim is not to go into the countries and to describe single species. From time to time it happens, but this is not my main interest. My main interest is to clear large genera, which cannot be done, for example, inside India, because you don't have access to all the specimens outside of India. So if you,
S-
for example, if you want to make a review of Oligodon, you cannot do this from India.
right.
It's, except if you want to travel a lot or things like that. But it is easier to do it from Europe to collect specimens from collections and to count them and examine them. And so you can work in many countries. And
So,
with
so
large genera like Xenogrophis, for example, the review that we made, it is now much easier for the people in the countries to continue with the work because they don't have to care for the outside species
true,
because they
true.
are differentiated.
True. So you visit lots of museum that we are in communication, regular communication, and keep sending me that you are in this museum, that museum. Most of
Yeah.
the time you are, whenever you have time, you are traveling. So, Mike, for many of us, like we need to know, like once you are in museum, you don't go to museum and start seeing the specimen. You have some objective in your mind. With that objective you go to the museum and start that whole program of like finding out, like for example, if we talk about xenocrophis, there was the denocrophis was described from the piscator was described from the skin.
Yeah.
And you finally you found that skin, that skin you, because it was not there, it was, we only know about the Russell's painting and so forth and so, but in your publication you wrote. So it's, is it like something like a detective work which you do, like you keep on digging into, and how do you, what is the mindset when you are working in a museum?
That is not so easy. I'm working at many genera. This is making the work in the museum for me very effective. So it is not like that I say, okay, I go to the Museum of Vienna to see the Xenogrophis. This is the starting point, but I don't know how much they have and I don't know how long I take for that. So if I
Hmm,
go for 1 week in the Museum of Vienna, for example,
hmm,
I start with Xenogrophis, but then I have a wish list of many genera. When Xenogrophis is finished, I continue with Oligodon and so on and so on. And I have been maybe many times in that museum, already saw many specimens. So I always have a list of the specimens that I already saw. For
hmm.
example, in Vienna, this will be about 500 or 600. And when I work from the yeah, the wish list I work up. So usually I have a list for every museum. I say, okay, when I come next time to London, I have to see the types of Oligodon. And when I come to London, I see, okay, at the moment I'm working with Xenogrophis. I look at the Xenogrophis. I also want to look at the Oligodon types. and then I look at other types, and then I look at other species that I may be working in the future.
Okay. So now, if you are going to a museum for 7 days, as for example,
Uh,
so at in this point of 7 days, how many generally at an average, how many specimen do you see? For example, for this 7 day.
it is the first day usually is very slow
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
have to say hello to everybody. You have to
Yeah.
prepare your working place, and it half of or 30% of the day is off then. But I say usually I can examine about 25 specimens.
Per
I
day.
don't take on one day. I don't take too much data now. I work like that, that I take that data that you cannot see from the pictures, like the
Correct.
length, like the sex, like the ventrals, the subcaudals, and so on. And then I take pictures from every side and every angle. And when I'm at home, I take the missing data.
So tell me one thing that many of us are very interested to know. For in live specimen, we sexing is very easy. Like if we want to know apart from ventrals, I'm not talking about ventral count and all, but what is the method like? If like many species, the ventrals may not have that big difference to tell apart. Like this is female, like Faulia group is very easy, but tell me like for species which are very having small range of difference, how do you examine the hemipenis of a preserved specimen?
In fact, I do not examine the hemipenis, but I check if they have a hemipenis. I just
Yeah,
cut
yeah.
off the
Okay.
tail from the
Hmm.
underside of the tail. I make a small cut and I look inside if I see a hemipenis. But this is not an easy thing. You
True.
need some experience. In the beginning, I didn't see anything,
Yeah,
but
me
the
too.
more you look, the easier it is. But it is
Okay.
for some genera, it is not easy. If you have, for example, Cylindrophis, I don't know if you know, it's not well common in India, but for some genera, it is very difficult to see. For some genera, it's very easy to see.
Okay.
Depends
So
on. But Oligodon, for example, is not a problem, but some species are very problematic, also for me.
So, because you and Patrick, they have lots of you have given emphasis because you are doing lots of work in Trimerosaurus, and you have given emphasis on hemipenis lots in many cases. Now, my question is like in evolution, and it is my direct question. In evolutionary process, what is that? What is the difference between what advantage or disadvantage we get for having spines or not having spines in hemipenis?
I don't think, you know, the hemipenis, oh, I hope I don't say too much wrong things, but the hemipenis is nothing that is that brings a big advantage. This is the reason why the hemipenis is so important. For example, you see a coloration. You see a green snake living in the trees. This green color doesn't say too much because it is green, because it is living in the trees. If the trees in that area would be brown, they would change their color quite fast. But this would not say that these are very different species. Maybe they are more or less the same, just subspecies or forms. They are just adapted to the color of the trees. But the hemipenis has not much to do
With environment.
spines or not spines. And this is the reason why the hemipenis is so important, because it does not change with
Con-
the environment.
Conserved, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you can you just have do you have any idea what these spines like having spines like? I have a small theory. I don't know if because hemipenis tells lot because it is a conserved structure. So is it like if I am an arboreal species or if I am an aquatic species, to keep hold on the female organ, so I need some extra grip. So is it does the spine have certain such I don't know what is your point of view here?
I don't think so. Very important, for example, is in the group of Trimerosaurus steinegeri, you have spines, but these spines are not soft spines. These are more or less hard spines. These are
Okay,
really hard. And
okay,
the Trimerosaurus popiorum, for example, is living more or less in the same environment and has no spines at all. So
Okay.
obviously this does not say too much.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. True. So,
But it is
like,
clear that there's no crossbreeding possible because these spines are really hard. So, of course, not a Steinegeri male can crossbreed with a Popayom female if she's not
wow.
prepared for these hard spines.
Correct. So that's a great point. So now, if we come back to the Asian, again, Asian herpetofauna, like mainly snakes. So, you have resolved a bit about Xenocrophis group is resolved a bit, and locally now we can start working. And then, what is your opinion as of now regarding Oligodon?
Oligodon.
Yeah.
We are working heavily on Oligodon. This is a very large genus, as you know. Xenogrophis was more or less a small genus and was more or less easy to manage as well, 8 or something like that species. But in Oligodon, you have, I think, 60 or something like that, or even more. So
Okay.
Oligodon must be split into groups to work on them. And we are
Correct.
now working on groups. And
Okay.
the problem with Oligodon is that you have sometimes obviously different coloration or different pattern in the same species, a striped and a banded form, for example. And we are not sure, or generally, people are not sure if these are different species or just color variation. This is a typical Oligodon problem.
So, so, for example, many American species, not too much about Indian. Many American species of snakes and all have lots of subspecies, but we in Asian population do not have much number of subspecies. Like, what do you think? Is it because of the less people are working in this field from Asia? Is primary contributor to the fact that we are having less number of subspecies for the snakes mainly. We almost have none, very few maybe. But what is the reason that American and all have more subspecies than we have?
I think it has to do with the history of the continent. I think it's really I thought about this problem, and in America, a lot of DNA analysis are making a lot of trouble because they mix up the subspecies and usually they change the subspecies and the names. I think in Asia we are quite lucky that here, due to the history of the continent, uh, the the species are better differentiated. They are not so close. For example, if you look at Trimeresurus, they are looking very similar. Popeorum male looks like a Steinigeri male, hardly to tell apart. But the difference in DNA is very, very large. So these cannot interbreed. And so I think it is just luck that we have not so much subspecies in Asia. But on the other side, it would be possible to split some species into subspecies, like it is done for some of the former Elaphe species, like Porphyracea or Tenura. These are split in subspecies, and if somebody is starting to split, our splitters are usually following, describing subspecies. But if nobody starts, usually um, when no subspecies are sometimes described. But I know very little species where I have the feeling that there are subspecies. Usually, you have species in Asia and in America. It is somehow different. I cannot tell you why exactly, what is the difference, but I think it's a difference in the history of the continent. For example, if
So
you look at Europe, we have, for some lizards, we have hundred of subspecies. For all
yes.
these islands, the different subspecies are described. But in Asia, you don't have this problem, and obviously, you also don't have so much different populations.
So, many authors have their own reservation regarding describing a species or subspecies. So, I just want to know that what is your personal view on creating subspecies or not, refraining from creating subspecies?
I prefer to create subspecies. I did not create very much because I know this discussion, and I think this is a somewhat unusual discussion because it is not made in Europe. In Europe, people are still very fond of subspecies. We have many species, also snakes, that have a lot of subspecies. And I know in America, they are looking at it in a different way. I think if a species, if a form or a population is looking different, why not describing it as a subspecies? People say, yeah, you can say this is the form of California, California form or Colorado form, but this is why we made the Latin names to go away from this California or Colorado form to give a scientific name. Now it's stupid to start the other way around again. I prefer subspecies, and we are lucky that we had so much subspecies because many of these subspecies turned out to be real species now, and so we have some information on this species and not just on the species group.
So, for many species that we are working, like let's take an example, and I will share the screen a bit for all of the viewers so that they can see. So, I'll take an example of Trimerosaurus, and so I'm just sharing the screen so that you can also see. This is
Yeah, Tyrannosaurus, I see.
so. Huh. So we are here with Trimerosaurus. So, like for example, like we are discussing an Erythrurus. So I will just guide. You just can tell me, and I can guide you. So what are the landmarks while like describing a Trimerosaurus? What are the things that we should? You can just tell, and I can just zoom that in.
Oh, Tyrannosaurus is a very, very difficult group.
Okay,
So you can see here the hemipenis.
I'll just
This is,
I'll just zoom it. Wait,
yeah, the hemipenis is,
wait.
yeah, I see the hemipenis, yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Hmm.
This is a typical hemipenis for the Popiorum group. It's very long
Huh.
and without spines.
But this
Uh,
is a, yeah.
this should be
So
a,
this is Erythrurus,
yeah, Popiorum alvolabris group. This is has
same
the same
type of hemi.
hemipenis. Yeah,
Okay,
and
okay,
this is a very very long and thin hemipenis without any spines. If you
okay,
look at
yeah,
the hemipenis of a Steinigeri, you see that there are very very much spines, and so this
okay,
hemipenis is not helping you to determine the species itself, but it is helping you to determine the group
okay,
of the species. So you can say, okay, no spine, so it is not the Steinigeri group or what is called the subgenus Viridiophipara.
okay. So I'll just help you out. Like spine happy. Those who are seeing, like I Trimerosaurus, hemipenis.
You are looking for a hemipenis with spines.
Yeah. So that we can show something. So this is the one which is almost similar to us. Like it is Trimerosaurus fascatus. It has almost similar to our the hemipenis we have just seen. So this is the one you can say this has spines, right?
Uh, I
I'll just
see it
zoom it.
only on the small phone because on my computer I have a little bit delay.
It's okay, no problem. It's like a revision of it's your paper revision of Trimerosaurus puniceus
Yeah,
complex.
but these are not the spines of Steinigeri. Steinigeri has stronger spines, and these are soft spines.
Okay, so okay, let's we have now idea a little bit about spines. Now, what else do you look into when you are describing a Trimerosaurus? Let's stick to Trimerosaurus as of now, for example. So you do this ventral counts, right?
For example, yeah. But you know, Trimerosaurus is a difficult group. You can count, for example, the upper labial scales, but these upper labial scales do not say anything because they are usually the same.
Same. Now, tell me one thing. I have a question. Like nowadays, that you mark as preventrals and ventrals, right?
Yeah,
So, if I say like here, if I take this example, so
yeah.
how many preventrals do you see?
Okay. Hmm. And I would take the first two as preventrals, but this is
This
a
and this.
not easy thing with the preventrals.
Okay. So if I think like you can take this as preventral and this, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Now if we come down to this, most of your paper, I see you are discussing lots about scale between the supraocular.
yeah,
So is it a very determining character for Trimerosaurus?
yeah. But not for all species. But some species are very different. Yeah, some have this has a very small scales on the head, and some species have bigger scales. Also
Okay.
small, but not like a colubrid, but much
Ah,
bigger than in this case.
okay. So if I have to like count for everyone, like if I have to count, I count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Right?
Yeah, I think so. Wait,
Okay.
I have a little bit delay on the.
Okay. Oh, sorry. You are having delay. No problem. I have just counted it out. You can see now. But I will
But
just
as
go.
you see, there are different paths from the
Okay.
supraocular, from one supraocular to the other one. So different counters might have a small difference in the counts. But this is
Okay.
not a problem because you always have variation. You have here
So,
maybe a variation between 12 and 15. But you have other species where you have only 8. And so you have a difference in any way.
so
If you have a species that has where you count 12 to 15 and another species where you count 11 to 14, this is not a difference.
okay. So tell me, like what are the most important determining like landmarks for uh, telling apart? Like already published and like we have done lots of work on. Those are the landmarks that we should see. The first thing that we should see,
For Trimasaurus,
or in general, snakes.
yeah, the main thing is every genus is different. You cannot say everything is the same. So, for example, if you take Trimasaurus, supralabials are not of interest because more or less every species has the same and there's some variation. You will not have supralabials in any way important. But in other genera, this might be a very important character. So you have to know your genus and you have to know which characters are important in the genus, which are
So
variable, which are more or less always the same, and which are important.
in Trimerosaurus, I see because you have you used the term supralabial. I have seen in many all the papers of Trimerosaurus there is a relation between the first supralabial and nasal scale.
Between what?
First supralabial and the nasal.
Also, yeah, this
So
is a
are they fused? Are they not fused? This is
yeah,
an
yeah, yeah.
important.
This is also an important character in Trimaris, a very important character. But in fact, you have only three states. It can be fused, it can be separate, or it can be partly fused.
Partly
And
fused. Yeah.
so, with as you have 40 species, it's difficult if you have only three states in a character. You can again group the species, but you cannot determine a species by it. Perhaps Albolabris has a very, if you know it very well, you can see that this is partly divided, and I can see usually at the scale if it is an Albolabris. But for other species, I can only say it's this group or that group. Usually, it's united.
Okay. So, for other snakes, like we have just discussed. Like next, we'll come in the most important thing, the dorsal scale rows. That is also
Yeah,
an important landmark. So,
yeah,
because I see that like dorsal scale rows, like in Xenocrophis or anything like that, 17, 19, 19, or something like that,
yeah,
or 19, 17, 15, 19,
yeah,
17, 15. So
yeah.
actually what is the method that you use? Like is it like a one head length behind the neck that you start your first reading?
Yes, I usually count one head length behind the head, in the middle of the body, and one head length before the vent. But here again, you must know your group. For example, in Oligodon, you must be very careful, because usually you have the reduction. So if you have reduction, means if you have 19 after the head, 17 in the middle, and there is somewhere a reduction in between from 19 to 17. And this
Hmm.
reduction may be close to the middle of the snake. So you must be very careful, for example, in oligodon, where you count. So in
Hmm.
oligodon, I make more counts to see if the reduction is very close to the middle of the body. But in Trimeresurus, usually it's not so important, because nearly all species have 21. And so this is not a character for Erythrus, as you showed in the picture, it has more. But most species have 21. So twin species usually 21. But
So, no, carry
but in
on.
other groups, it might be a very important character.
So now that you have done, and many of other authors are doing like scale reduction, they are pointing out that which above which ventral the scale reduction is occurring. Like I take a standard example. This is a very confusing bit, and I had a question from many, and few, at least two of them have asked me to ask you, like regarding scale reduction, and I myself have a confusion. Like uh, if you are having 19 at the neck, if you are having 19 here, and like we go down, and here we are having like 17 in the mid body. So
Mhm.
somewhere in between, you will also get 18,
Yeah,
because
most
some
probably.
so so it is not like, so how do you say, because scale reduction, the point at which the scale is reduced plays an important role. Is it like just you are counting above the ventrals, above which ventral the scale has reduced? Is it the theory?
Yes. One problem that I always have, that many of these scale counts are not very well defined. So you have, the best is if you make a publication, if you are new as hepatologist, write down exactly how you are doing it. I can
Correct.
tell you to say, if you say you're counting the ventral where the scale reduction is, this is not so easy, because if the scale reduction is close to the middle of the body, you might go down, or you might go the row down.
Okay.
Difficult to explain, because you can count the dorsal in different ways if you look into the books.
So,
A little bit
so,
difficult to explain without pictures, but
so
the
I, I just want a feedback on my method, what, so that everybody can understand. What I do is, if I am really like, I really want to know the scale reduction. So what I do is, after every 10 ventral,
yeah,
after every, there is one more problem I'll tell you. So for example, this is the snake.
yeah,
This is the snake. So many of us start counting and go
yeah,
like this, and then we are actually touching two ends.
yeah.
And I believe the better counting would be like V. Like better counting would be, because this counting, we are counting a range, a big range, and we are going to maybe a area where we should not. We are going to a, from, yeah.
This is exactly what I just wanted to explain, but without without pictures. Yes, you are right, and this is a problem when I see that people say the scale reduction is as this ventral. I don't know how they came to the ventral. If it is very low on the body, on row number 1 and 2, usually it's easy. You can see, okay, it's a ventral that they are bordering. But if it's more or less in the middle of the body, you might get different numbers. And furthermore, you must say exactly how many preventrals you counted, because this is another source of mistakes. So scale reduction is not an easy thing. But in fact, I made many scale reduction for Xenogrophis, and there is a big variation in the scale reduction in a place where the scale reduction is. But I think
Yeah.
scale reduction is difficult to understand for the beginner, because the first thing is to understand what is a scale reduction.
Yes.
Uh, it is you must think about, okay, I have in the middle of the body 17, I have in the beginning of the body 19, so something must happen in between. So two rows must come
Go.
together to get one row. And
Yeah.
if you have understood this, maybe it's easier. But it is not an easy thing. It's the same if you start in the in the neck, for example, where it is even more important to say how you come to the ventral, because if you count the ventrals backward, you are far away from the neck eventually, depending on the size of the scales or
Correct.
on the number of the scales. Because if you are starting, you are maybe in the neck, but if you are counting backwards like a V, you might be far away from the neck,
Yes, true. That's the
and
point I was trying.
you might also um, this is difficult to understand, but you might cross a reduction.
Yes, cross reduction. That's the point, because that's why I said if I can do it like V, like V. So I
Yeah,
start from the point and I end almost at the same point.
yeah,
But if I do like diagonally, I start from a point and I almost may cross the mid body and go somewhere.
that's right. But I hardly see anybody explaining how he counted the dorsals in the paper. Usually they are just say we counted in the middle and in the neck. For many genera, there are no problem because more or less there is only one reduction. Then it's
Correct,
usually no problem. But if you
correct.
have more reductions, or in the former Elaphus species, where the scales may be very difficult with many reductions, and the opposite of reduction, getting more scales again, then there it should be very exact. But I think what I wanted to do in the past is to write at least a PowerPoint how to count scales or something like that, but just a lot of work. But for every
So
scale count, I think there are some problems that are usually not discussed in literature.
So I will on this, on the behalf of all of us, or mostly, so all the herpetologists or newly aspiring herpetologists, I want to request you, like if you can, it may take 6 months, it doesn't matter. If you can, like your procedure, that the procedure you do the scale counts. If you can make a small presentation at some point of time when you are little free. So and if we are then actually what happens is we know the term. I'll tell you, when I started, what was the problem? We know temporals, but the problem is how to count. What is the relation between two temporals? We did not know. The problem was we know that there are two rows of temporal counted, but I did not know that the first row, all the connection of the first row to the second row are the second row of the temporals, all in connection to the first row. So there was, like in literature, it was not like these are temporal, they marked, but why these are temporal, it was not said. So many of these confusion. So if you can make something like, where we can like discuss, like people can get it a parity, like so that everybody can come into one ground level, like as you said, this is a very good point. Like there is also a difference in counting mid body scales. If
Yeah.
the result, yeah,
The temporals is also not an easy thing. You know, if you see in a book how you have to count the scales of a snake, it is always the same pictures, and this is always a very easy example where it's very
yes,
clear. But
yes,
in fact, usually it's not so clear. For
correct,
example, in Boiga, you have a species with two rows of temporals, but what is normal, but you have some species that have a lot of temporals. When I made in a publication, I wrote 16 temporals. I got it back from the reviewers. What do you mean by 16 temporals? I said, yeah, not only the first and the second row are temporals. So temporals are the scales of this region in a line going up to the large scales of the head
hmm,
from the egg of the from the edge of the mouth. And but several times the reviewer said, no, nonsense. You only
hmm.
have five temporals. And I said, no, I have 16. And this is important, for example, in Boiga, because there are species where you can really say, okay, this is a small temporal species. But if I count it the same way, I come on five temporals. But these are in some species very small. And
Okay.
so you, in my mind, you have 16 then, or 20 even. But yeah, it's the same problem. There is I see no book or something where this is really explained in detail. It's always the same. They show one or two anterior temporals, well, no small scales inside where you don't know how to count them or something like this. It's always very clear in the pictures. But in fact, in reality, in at least 20% of the specimens, it's not so easy.
Okay, so I will just again for 1 minute, I'll just share the screen so that everybody can see at least what we are talking if they don't know. So I have got some scales here. Uh, yes. So yeah. So if we can go, you can just talk us through this. I'll just zoom it a bit. So yeah. So my knowledge says, as of my knowledge, you are not, you are possibly, you are not seeing, you don't see, you are seeing the in mobile you are seeing,
Yeah, small,
but
but I see.
is there a lag in the mobile?
No, yeah, yeah, I see it. Yeah, I see it now on the computer also.
Okay, so don't see in the computer because there will be a lag in the computer, but mobile will work fine. So
Yeah,
can you see my cursor?
yeah.
So this is temporal, right?
Ah. So again.
I'll just zoom again.
Yeah, yeah,
Zoom.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So so if I say these are post oculars, right?
yeah,
These are post oculars, and
yeah,
if suddenly I see a small scale here
yeah.
between the temporal and post ocular, so what do you say? This is also a temporal?
It is a temporal, but here you see a very good problem because many people might say you have three anterior temporals and two posterior ones. Some
Yeah.
people are saying you have three postoculars and two anterior temporals.
Yes. Yes.
I,
What?
for example, sometimes I would like to count. I have two anterior temporals. In the second row, you have one, and in the third row, you have two again. But
Okay.
this is also, yeah, you can also say you have two, two, one, if because these two are nearly connected in the middle. So you see, it is altogether you can say you have five, but to say which are the anterior ones, it is
Yeah.
not very easy. You have to have a real good definition, and I think this definition is missing at the moment.
Okay, that's the point I was trying to raise. So now I'll just, for sake of everyone, I'll just go through the names. So these are the supralabials,
Yeah,
these are the infralabials,
yeah,
and this is the preocular. These are the postoculars. This
yeah,
is the supraocular. This is the l'oreal,
yeah,
and this is the nasal.
yeah,
And just above the nasal, if I can go up there, so this scale is internasal,
yeah,
prefrontal,
yeah,
frontal,
yeah,
and these are the, already I have said, these are the supraoculars.
yeah.
Then we have these are the parietals, right?
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. And if I see from above, these are the 1, 2, and 1, 2. These are the temporals that we saw.
yeah,
Right. So this is the basic idea that we wanted to talk about head scale. So it's a live picture. This is the snake they have drawn, I think.
yeah,
So you see that small scale here as
yeah,
well. Now if I go to that scale, dorsal scale count,
yeah.
dorsal scale count, that so that I can make you others understand what we are talking, like V shape and all. So this is a photograph that we got. It's coming. Okay. So can you see?
Yeah.
So I was telling that if we count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 diagonally, we actually are going beyond a boundary. We are occupying more area on the body
Yeah,
of the scale. As a
yeah,
result, we may miss out the scale reduction thing in between.
yeah,
But I prefer, this is the best for me. So what
yeah.
do you say? What do you say? This is the best for me, or if you can do this.
I would also prefer the same as yours.
So
The
see,
first one.
I tell you this is not possible for me because sometimes there is a problem doing this. But I always do this. I always do this one. So because I
Mhm.
start from the point and I end almost at the similar point. So I am not gaining or losing any area. So and for ventrals, I'll go back and you can just tell me, like, these are the ventrals that we count, and then there is this anal, right, from where we do this hemipenis, right?
Yeah.
And then anals can be like single and can be divided. And is that a important taxonomic character?
Yeah, it is, but usually it doesn't help you too much because it is very often also a character that is for the definition of a genus. So if you
Okay.
have, for example, or in some genera it is, or if you take Pareas, for example, the slug eaters, you
Okay.
always have a single anal scale, and so it is often not very helpful.
So and then you see the subcaudals may be divided or maybe single.
Yeah,
So like
same
in
problem.
amphiesma, I'll tell you, like in amphiesma, most of them are having divided,
Yeah,
and then you get this amphiesma zenura,
yeah,
so which is single.
yeah.
I don't know. It's like the question is making sense or not. But why do you think, like, suddenly, why evolutionarily, why molecular wise also amphiesma zenura fits into the clade that you have seen already, the clade. So what is that made him like in Bangaras, all are having single subcaudal.
Yeah,
That I can understand because it's a characteristic of the genus. But
yeah.
suddenly a snake, all of a sudden, became having a single subcaudal. What do you think? What is the implication of this?
Phew, difficult to say. I know Xenura. I caught it myself, and I don't see something special with this snake. I don't know. But the problem is that we know very little about the biology of the snakes of Asia. This is
Okay.
we come back to the book that you are talking in the beginning. If you see a book on the reptiles of Germany, it has 1,000 pages, despite the fact that we have maybe 15 species snakes and lizards together, and 1,000 pages mainly on biology. There are pages and pages and pages on biology on each species. Even for my part of Germany, I'm living in Baden-Württemberg or in Bayern, for example, there are books that have nearly 1,000 pages on the reptiles, only for one province. And in Asia, if I make a book and I write about the biology of a species, usually it is 5 or 6 sentences. It's living in bushes, it is feeding on lizards, and it's active in the night and often found close to rivers. That's it. This is, of course, not very much. So it's difficult to say why one species has this character and the other species has it not. It is we just know very, very little about the biology of the species. Maybe there is no real reason for that. Maybe it
Okay.
is not so important, but maybe there is a reason. We just don't know much
Don't
about
know.
Genova.
Okay. So we are almost. We have done 50 minutes. So we are almost at the end of our conversation. So I will just go to the comment section and check out what are the comments, if a particular question we have, so that we can take some questions. So
Okay.
okay. So I'll just check it out. Yeah. So
I see some well-known names.
yeah, there are, all the names are well known, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to. I don't know. These are very difficult. Facebook thing is difficult because I am not able to. I am only seeing few comments, not all. So how do I see it? That's the problem. So there is a problem. A question. Obrojal Ghosh. He is asking, when you are describing a snake species, how important is the sample size? Very good question.
Yeah. But not so easy to answer. Um, the main thing you can say, the more different the new species is, the
Uh,
smaller the sample size has to be.
uh,
Meanwhile, often you only have one specimen. If you have DNA and so on, and you have good characters, one specimen is enough. But
okay.
if you have very slight difference, or if you have populations that are very similar and the DNA is also not so clear, of course you need much more specimens. But what I think is, if you have a certain sample size, let's say for a new species you have 10 specimens,
Okay.
and you count the ventrals. In fact, the ventrals is like a Gauss curve.
Okay.
Let's say it's a mathematical curve, but if you have a certain amount, you can see how the curve will be. You always will have outliers, upside and downside, and the more you count, the bigger the variation will be. If you count 1,000, you will have a very big variation, of course. If you count only 10, the variation will be much smaller. But this you can also make by mathematics. You don't need to count with thousand. You can mathematically say how much the variation will be if you count 1,000 specimens. And
Okay.
it has simply the problem is how strong are the characters, and do you have DNA analysis that shows that it is very different when one specimen will be enough? It depends also if it is a common, if you have a water snake, of course you demand more specimens. But if you have a digging snake that was never seen before, you have only one specimen, what will you do? You cannot say, okay, we wait for 15 other years to find another one.
Correct. So I'll just go through. I'll just take the questions those who have
Yeah.
said. Uh, hello, sir. Good evening. Kaushik Devti said, "Hi Garnot, nice to see you after many years."
That is good. I see that
Okay.
also.
अच्छा. Hello there. Shoival Sengupta sir say, "Hi Garnot, nice to see you after a long time. Keep safe. God bless you."
Thank you. You too.
So, acha. Now Kaushik Devti sir has a question. If in two different population of so-called same species of Trimerosaurus living in two completely different habitat in widely separated area, in one population the nasal is fused to the first supralabial and in other are distinctly separated, will you call them two different subspecies or completely different species?
For Trimerosaurus, it will be different species because this character is very, very important. Um, but of course, if you have only one specimen, there might be uh, um, it might be not enough. But if you know the whole population, usually has it separate, or the other population has it connected. When these are different species groups even.
So then Loni McCaskey says, hello.
Hello.
Okay. Then Shayantan Pal said, "Sir, can you please tell me which are the basal tetrapod which are more closer to reptiliomorphan phylogeny?" It's too tough.
Oh, this is. I think I'm not the real person to ask this because phylogeny is not my special thing. I'm an what we call alpha taxonomist. So for
Okay.
me, the species are more interesting when how they inter or belong together in phylogenetically. I think if I'm a teacher and I have a lot of children in my class, the first thing is to know their names, not if
Yes.
their grandfathers were somehow connected or something like that. And the first thing is who is sitting in the class. And if you know everything about that, you can go deeper. I know other
Okay.
people are very interested in phylogenetics, but for me, it is yeah, and with DNA analysis today, we say 100% sure these are different genera. The next analysis, 100% sure
They are not.
with the same genus. So,
So,
yeah,
so you have seen that like many keeps on asking like why is that nowadays that the genera is like every update of reptile database you see the species in some genera then you see in the next genera, and then back to the same genera. So do you think it's not, it's more of like it's good, but is it not, do you don't you think it's not doing the service that it deserves, the taxonomy deserves to do?
Yes, there's a long discussion about that. Sometimes I have the feeling that if you make a paper and you say everything is fine as it is, not the paper will not be seated very much. But if you make a paper and you write, oh, everything is different, you have to split, you have to combine, you have to change everything, then you will be surely seated very much. It's many scientists will be angry if I say like this, but
Huh.
I think it has to do with that. To change things makes your paper more important than to leave things as they are. And
So
I think I'm, you know, for species or for genera, it is very different because a species is something more or less biological, more or less. We have species or we have not species. But for genera, what is a genus? There's no real definition. It's just species that belong somehow together. Now we
okay,
say they have to be monophyletic. Okay, but what is a genus?
still
There
say.
is no real definition where you split or where you lump a genus. So different researchers can have different opinions and change the genus and change it back. And they say, like we have it in South America with botrops, they split botrops when they unite it again, and when they split it again, and some say it's 10 genera, some say it's only one genus. Both are not wrong. Both have the same data, more or less. So I prefer to keep the number of genera low because if you, for example, come into hospital and you have for Trimarasaurus, they have some
Bye.
antidote.
Hmm.
And on the antidote, they're standing, this is helping against Trimarasaurus bites.
Hmm.
But if I take some other taxonomy, there must be standing, this is helping against bites of Viridophypera, Papaya, Trimarasaurus, uh, Himalayophis, and a long list. And a doctor will say, oh, what genus do we have? Even if he has a snake at hand, we cannot tell him. We need a DNA analysis first. So this makes everything very confused. So to say it's Trimasaurus, fine. And there's nothing speaking against that because it's a monophyletic genus. And this is happening, the same is happening now, that people are again trying to keep the number of genera low. And for example, in Naya, in the cobras, the same happened as in Trimasaurus. Wolfgang Wüster said we make a subgenera because this is not changing the Latin name, in fact, because you don't have to mention the subgenus. So Naya, the cobras had to be changed. The names had to be changed. The genus had to be changed for the African ones. And so I think this is a good solution to keep the changes as small as possible, because at the moment many new species are described anyway, and there are anyway changes. But this have to be done because species are natural forms, genera are not.
So before we go, like you are just talking about venomous snakes and snake bite. So have you been bitten by snakes, venomous snake? I know of one.
Yes, I have been bitten once in China. I was bitten by a protopotrops into the finger.
And you have lost your finger mark, right?
I have I don't know if you can see, but my right finger is still very small compared to my left finger, and I nearly lost my finger. But it was also due to wrong treatment in the hospital here. It was not, and the problem was that I had to fly home with this bite, with this fresh bite. We were just packing, preparing for our trip home. And so I had a lot of stress, at the airport, changed the aeroplane in Hong Kong, and waiting for the next aeroplane, going through the customs and all these things. And this was not very good for my finger and for my nerves, in fact.
So
So
so at the end, like we have exhausted the time, and we got an very interesting and informative discussion. I hope everybody is benefited. I hope in future I will not bother you too much, but in near future, at maybe 3 or 4 or 5 months, if we can have a like in depth, like this was like many, you can see just me and I can just see you. So maybe in future where we can like you can just enroll 20 to 30 or less than that, maybe 10 to 15, where we can interact and you can take a small class for us.
Yeah. I think we can do that. That's no problem. And thank you for all the people listening to my longer explanations. And it was the first time for me doing something like that. I was a little bit nervous, but I think it was a
So
fine
I
thing.
helped you. Yeah, I helped you out. You should thank me. So
Yeah, I must thank JJ too because really he helped me, and I think you did a very good job, and your questions were very interesting, and yeah,
okay,
I'm
okay.
wondering.
But yeah, I'm not going to pay you anything because as much as you can tell about me.
You don't want to give me the $5,000 we made for this person?
So anyway, you be online. I'll just disconnect the live. So thank you all of you for being here. Maybe tomorrow we have Shoibal Sengupta sir with us. We'll have another talk on amphibians of India tomorrow, and we are having some other guests, and we are. I am trying to bring them. I hope we'll have better time in the lockdown season. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and stay
Sir, you
home.
yeah, I am staying home. Yeah.